This is the ceiling of a deck house. And you can see there's 3 layers of wood. The underside being cedar that's stained typically on the inside of the house. That is your ceiling. It's tongue and groove. Here's the tongue and groove, right? That gets put together, gets screwed together. And this is the part facing the upper part of the roof. On top of this, you get insulation board, ISO board, rigid insulation that gets installed on top of this. It could be 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, depending on code in various areas. And then on top of that is plywood, and that completes the sandwich. So you have to remember, there's no attic underneath because it's an exposed ceiling. So if you have to replace plywood or insulation, you got to make sure you have screws that are long enough to go through that part of the sandwich into the meaty part of the ceiling, but not long enough where it's going to poke out underneath, exposing that fastener into the home. So that's why you got to consider the fastener length and the thickness of the insulation. And if you, God forbid, have to replace part of this wood, then you have to either chisel out, these layers and replace them and glue them together. Or if it's rotten all the way across, or you're cutting out a skylight, then you have to cut it out and make sure it's structurally sound for the 8-foot on center rafter beams that this tongue and groove wood is spanning across. And what makes it structurally sound is the staggered seams on this tongue and groove, where some of it falls on top of the 8-inch on center rafter beams, but others float in between those structural supports. But once they're tongue and groove together, everything is structurally sound. You just can't replace this wood and have too many pieces cut out in between those 8-foot rafter beams, because then that wood will sag and it won't be structurally sound. So you'll have to span it across all the way over to the next rafter beam, which will be 16 feet. And that's why I say if you're replacing full pieces of ceiling, you're gonna have to span it across, and most likely you're gonna have to piecemeal it together and kind of put together this tongue and groove setup and stagger the seams of these individual boards so they span across and everything can be tied together structurally